Ethan Montgomery sat at the head of the long, polished mahogany dining table in the grand dining room of the Montgomery estate. The soft glow of the chandelier above cast shimmering reflections on the table's surface, but Ethan's mood was anything but luminous. His jaw was tight, his arms crossed, and his piercing gray eyes held a stormy intensity as he stared at his parents. "Ethan, this is not just about you," his father, Richard Montgomery, stated firmly, his voice carrying the weight of authority he had wielded in both family matters and business negotiations. "This marriage will strengthen alliances. The Cavendish family is influential, and their connections could benefit us greatly." Ethan scoffed, pushing his chair back slightly, the legs scraping against the marble floor. "So, this is about business. Not love, not compatibility, just power and profit." Across the table, Evelyn Montgomery, Ethan's mother, placed a gentle hand on his father's arm, her expression a mix of empathy and persuasion. "Ethan, we understand how you feel, but marriage is about more than just emotions. Sophia Cavendish is a kind, well-educated woman. We believe she could be a wonderful partner for you if you give her a chance." Ethan shook his head, his frustration barely contained. "A wonderful partner? I've never even met her. And she's veiled. Why? What kind of woman hides her face in secrecy before marriage?" His voice rose slightly, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Richard's expression hardened. "Enough, Ethan. This decision has been made. You are a Montgomery, and you have a responsibility to this family." Evelyn's soothing tone followed, trying to bridge the gap. "At least meet her. Speak with her. You might be surprised." But Ethan's mind was already racing. The idea of losing his freedom to a marriage dictated by tradition and alliances left him seething. He felt like a pawn in a game he hadn't agreed to play. As his parents exchanged glances, Ethan's resolve solidified. If this was a game, he would play it his way, even if it meant going against every expectation. The following evening, Ethan found himself in the drawing room, a space reserved for formal introductions. It was richly decorated with velvet drapes and antique furniture, but to Ethan, it felt suffocating. He stood near the fireplace, his posture tense, his gaze fixed on the door. When it finally opened, his breath hitched. A woman entered, her figure draped in an elegant burgundy gown, her face obscured by a flowing veil that matched the fabric of her dress. The room seemed to shrink as she moved with quiet grace, her steps measured, her presence commanding yet restrained. Sophia Cavendish inclined her head slightly in greeting, her voice soft yet steady. "Mr. Montgomery." Ethan struggled to suppress his irritation. "Sophia," he replied curtly. His eyes flicked to the veil, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Is there a reason you insist on wearing that?" Sophia paused, her hands clasped lightly in front of her. "I prefer it this way," she said simply, her tone unyielding but not confrontational. Her calmness only fueled Ethan's impatience. "Do you? Or is it just another way to keep me in the dark about this farce of a marriage?" Sophia's posture remained composed. "Perhaps it's an opportunity for you to look beyond appearances." Ethan's lips parted to retort, but he stopped short, taken aback by her response. Before he could muster a reply, she added, "I suggest we save our judgments for another time." The tension between them was palpable. Sophia's quiet poise contrasted starkly with Ethan's barely contained frustration. The evening passed in strained civility, with little progress made. As Sophia left the room, her veil swaying gently with her movements, Ethan felt an unfamiliar mix of curiosity and resentment stirring within him. The day of the wedding arrived with a mix of grandeur and unease. The Montgomery estate was transformed into a scene from a fairy tale, with ornate floral arrangements lining every path and glittering chandeliers adorning the reception hall. Guests from high society gathered, their chatter a blend of excitement and speculation about the enigmatic bride. Ethan stood at the altar, his hands clenched at his sides. He wore a tailored black tuxedo, but his mind was anything but polished. As the ceremony began, he could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, judging, waiting. But his thoughts were consumed by Sophia, still a stranger, still hidden behind that veil. When the grand doors opened and Sophia entered, a hush fell over the crowd. She was a vision in an intricate white gown, her veil shimmering faintly under the light. Her movements were fluid, almost regal, as she approached the altar. Yet to Ethan, her presence was more frustrating than awe-inspiring. As the vows were exchanged, Ethan's voice was steady, but his mind churned. Sophia's calmness only heightened his irritation. Why didn't she show any emotion? Was this all just a carefully rehearsed act? The reception that followed was equally tense. Guests mingled and toasted, but the newlyweds maintained a cool distance. Ethan observed Sophia from afar, her interactions polite but reserved. When their eyes met briefly across the room, she held his gaze for a moment before turning away. Later that evening, Ethan found himself alone in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey. The day had been exhausting, but his thoughts were sharper than ever. Who was Sophia Cavendish, really? And why did she seem so unaffected by the storm raging within him? The answers felt just out of reach, tantalizing and maddening all at once. The days following the wedding were marked by an uneasy silence between Ethan and Sophia. Though they now shared the same home, their lives felt like two parallel lines, close yet never intersecting. Ethan spent most of his time at work, burying himself in business matters to avoid facing the reality of his marriage. Sophia, on the other hand, remained composed and quiet, her veil still ever present, a constant reminder of the emotional distance between them. One afternoon, as Ethan sat in his expansive home office reviewing contracts for a high-stakes merger, he came across a troubling clause buried deep in the legal documents. It was a potential loophole that could be exploited, jeopardizing millions of dollars. Frustrated, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Everything all right?" Sophia's voice came from the doorway, soft but steady. Ethan looked up, startled. He hadn't heard her approach. She stood there, her veil in place, but her posture exuded calm confidence. "It's nothing you'd understand," he replied curtly, turning back to his papers. To his surprise, Sophia stepped forward. "May I take a look?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over his face. "Do you even know anything about business?" Sophia didn't respond to his condescension. Instead, she calmly approached the desk. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan handed her the document, curious to see how she'd respond. He expected her to fumble or offer a superficial observation. Instead, she took her time, scanning the pages with a practiced eye. "There's your problem," she said finally, pointing to a section in the middle of the contract. "This clause could be interpreted to give the other party leverage over the intellectual property rights. If I were negotiating, I'd insist on a revision here and here to close the loophole." Ethan stared at her, momentarily speechless. "How do you know that?" Sophia placed the document back on the desk. "I studied contract law during my time abroad. My father believed it was important for me to understand business fundamentals." Her calm delivery left Ethan both impressed and unsettled. He had assumed Sophia was nothing more than a sheltered, obedient woman thrust into an arranged marriage. This brief interaction challenged that assumption. For the first time, he wondered if there was more to her than he had allowed himself to see. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan began to notice more about Sophia. One evening, while walking past the kitchen on his way to the library, he overheard laughter and animated conversation. Curious, he paused by the door. Inside, Sophia stood with the kitchen staff, her veil still in place but her body language warm and inviting. She was discussing recipes with the head chef, her voice light with laughter as she recounted a humorous anecdote from her childhood. The staff hung on her every word, their respect for her evident. Ethan lingered in the shadows, watching. He had assumed that Sophia was distant and aloof, but here she was, effortlessly connecting with the people around her. The sight unsettled him. He had always prided himself on understanding people, yet Sophia seemed to slip through his grasp. Over the following days, Ethan couldn't help but notice small details about her. Sophia had a way of carrying herself with quiet dignity, her interactions always thoughtful and deliberate. She didn't seek attention or approval, yet people naturally gravitated toward her. One evening, Ethan found her tending to the garden, her hands lightly brushing over the flowers. "You're good with people," he said, stepping closer. Sophia looked up, her veil shifting slightly with the breeze. "I don't think of it that way," she replied. "I just try to treat everyone with kindness. It's a lesson my mother taught me." Ethan was struck by the sincerity in her voice. For the first time, he found himself wanting to know more about her. Not just the surface, but the person beneath the veil. Ethan's growing curiosity about Sophia led him to seek her input more often. One day, while reviewing a potential investment opportunity, he found himself stuck. The numbers didn't add up, and the proposal seemed too good to be true. Remembering Sophia's insight from before, he decided to seek her perspective. When he approached her, she was seated in the sunlit parlor, reading a book. "Do you have a moment?" he asked, his tone less brusque than usual. Sophia looked up, her expression calm. "Of course." Ethan handed her the documents, watching as she studied them with focused attention. "What do you think?" he asked after a few moments. Sophia placed the papers on the table. "The projections are overly optimistic," she said. "They're likely underestimating operational costs to inflate profitability. I'd recommend a more thorough due diligence process before committing." Ethan couldn't hide his surprise. "You caught that faster than my entire finance team." Sophia smiled faintly, her composure unwavering. "Sometimes it's easier to see things from the outside." From that day forward, Ethan began to rely on Sophia more frequently. Her insights were sharp, her advice invaluable. Slowly, a sense of mutual respect began to form between them. Ethan found himself drawn to her strength and intelligence, even as the mystery of her veil continued to frustrate him. Though they still didn't speak openly about their emotions, the dynamic between them shifted. Their interactions, once cold and transactional, grew warmer and more collaborative. For the first time, Ethan began to see Sophia not as an enigma to be solved, but as a partner whose depth and complexity deserved to be understood. One evening, the tension that had been quietly simmering between Ethan and Sophia finally boiled over. Ethan had been restless all day, pacing through the house with a frustration he couldn't shake. The veil, her ever-present veil, had become a symbol of all the barriers between them, both literal and emotional. He found himself standing outside her room, hesitating for a moment before knocking. "Come in," Sophia's calm voice called from inside. Ethan pushed the door open, finding her seated by the window, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. Her veil, as always, remained firmly in place. For a moment, he was struck by the serenity of her figure, but his frustration quickly overtook him. "Why do you insist on wearing that thing?" he demanded, his tone sharper than he intended. Sophia turned her head slightly toward him, her poise unbroken. "I wasn't aware it bothered you this much," she replied, her voice measured. "It does," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "It's like you're hiding something, like you don't trust me enough to show me who you are." Sophia was silent for a moment, then rose from her chair. "Ethan, do you truly believe that understanding a person comes solely from seeing their face?" she asked, her tone neither defensive nor confrontational, but thoughtful. Her words caught him off guard. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it feels like you're keeping me at arm's length. How am I supposed to know who you are if you won't even let me see you?" Sophia stepped closer, her presence calm yet commanding. "You've already seen who I am, Ethan," she said softly. "Not with your eyes, but through my actions, my words, and how I've chosen to live in this marriage." Ethan's frustration began to ebb, replaced by a deep, unsettling realization. She was right. In his impatience, he had focused so much on the veil that he had failed to truly understand the person standing before him. "Why do you wear it then?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "If it's not about hiding, then what is it?" Sophia took a deep breath. "Because I wanted to see if you could look beyond it," she said simply. "In a world where so much value is placed on appearances, I needed to know if you could see me for who I am, not for what I look like." Ethan was stunned. Her words struck a chord deep within him, forcing him to confront his own biases and insecurities. "I never thought of it that way," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the problem, Ethan," Sophia said gently. "You never tried to think beyond what you could see." For the first time since their marriage, Ethan felt a shift within himself. A desire not just to understand Sophia, but to grow into someone worthy of her trust and respect. After their conversation, Ethan found himself reflecting on everything Sophia had said. He realized how much of his frustration and resentment had stemmed not from her actions, but from his own preconceived notions. He had entered the marriage with rigid expectations, only to be challenged at every turn by Sophia's quiet strength and unconventional approach. Determined to change, Ethan began observing Sophia more closely, not through the lens of skepticism, but with genuine curiosity. He noticed how she carried herself with unwavering dignity, how she treated everyone she interacted with, from the household staff to his business associates, with respect and kindness. She was not the aloof and distant figure he had imagined. She was thoughtful, intelligent, and profoundly self-assured. One afternoon, Ethan approached her in the library, where she was immersed in a book. "Sophia," he began hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other night." She looked up from her book, her expression neutral but attentive. "And I've been wrong," Ethan admitted, the words feeling heavy but necessary. "I've been so focused on my own frustrations that I haven't taken the time to truly understand you, or this marriage." Sophia studied him for a moment before replying. "Understanding takes time, Ethan. It's not something that happens overnight." "I know," he said earnestly, "but I want to try. I want to start over." Sophia's lips curved into a faint smile. "That's a good place to begin." From that day forward, Ethan made a conscious effort to approach their relationship with patience and humility. He began asking Sophia about her interests, her past, and her thoughts on the world. Their conversations, once stilted and guarded, became more open and genuine. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was truly getting to know the woman he had married. As their relationship slowly began to transform, Ethan decided it was time to fully address the mistakes he had made. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, he turned to Sophia, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Sophia," he began, "I need to apologize for everything." She looked at him, her veil shifting slightly in the evening breeze. "What do you mean?" "For how I've treated you," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I've been impatient, judgmental, and unfair. I let my own frustrations cloud my view of you, and I never gave you the chance you deserved." Sophia was silent, letting his words sink in. Finally, she spoke. "I won't deny that it's been difficult, Ethan, but I also understand that this situation hasn't been easy for either of us." "I've been selfish," Ethan admitted. "I was so focused on what I thought I was losing that I never stopped to see what I was gaining. You've shown me more strength and grace than I ever deserved." Sophia's voice softened. "The veil was never meant to be a barrier, Ethan. It was a test, not just for you, but for me, too, to see if I could remain true to myself in a situation where I had no control." Her honesty struck Ethan deeply. For the first time, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for her patience and resilience. "I want to do better," he said simply. "For you, for us." Sophia placed a hand on his arm, her touch light but reassuring. "Then let's move forward together," she said, "one step at a time." In that moment, Ethan felt the walls between them begin to crumble. For the first time, their marriage felt less like an obligation and more like an opportunity, a chance to build something real, together. In the days and weeks following Ethan's heartfelt apology, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Where there had once been tension and silence, there was now a tentative warmth. Ethan and Sophia began to spend more time together, their interactions evolving from polite exchanges to meaningful conversations. It was as though a dam had broken, and the emotions that had been bottled up for so long were finally able to flow freely. Ethan started to see Sophia in a completely new light. Her intellect, which he had once overlooked, now became a source of admiration. When he sought her opinion on a business matter involving a potential merger, Sophia analyzed the proposal with remarkable clarity, pointing out risks and opportunities Ethan had missed. He was taken aback, not just by her insight, but by the quiet confidence with which she spoke. "Have you ever considered working with me on these deals?" he asked one evening as they reviewed a contract in the study. Sophia hesitated, her veiled head tilting slightly as she considered his words. "I didn't think you would want my input," she admitted. I didn't know what I was missing, Ethan replied earnestly. You have a gift for seeing things others don't. I could really use your perspective. Sophia's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. If you're willing to listen, I'd be happy to help. From that moment, their partnership extended beyond the personal into the professional. Sophia began attending business meetings with Ethan, her veil a constant presence that intrigued and intimidated others. While some dismissed her as merely the silent wife of a wealthy man, those who paid attention quickly realized her sharp mind and unwavering composure. Ethan found himself relying on her more and more, not just for her advice, but for the strength she brought to every challenge they faced together. Slowly, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble, replaced by a deepening respect and affection for the woman he had once misunderstood. The day of the annual charity gala arrived, a grand event attended by the most influential figures in the city. Ethan and Sophia were to attend together, and for weeks, whispers had circulated about the mysterious woman behind the veil. As they entered the opulent ballroom, all eyes turned to them. Ethan held Sophia's arm with quiet pride, no longer feeling the discomfort he once had about her veil. To him, it had become a symbol of her strength and the lessons she had taught him about patience, understanding, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. The evening was in full swing when Sophia approached Ethan, her voice calm but resolute. I think it's time, she said simply. Ethan knew exactly what she meant. Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. This isn't about them, it's about us. Sophia stepped onto the stage, the crowd falling silent as she addressed them. Many of you have wondered why I wear this veil, she began, her voice steady and clear. For me, it has been a choice, a way to challenge the assumptions we often make about one another based on appearance alone. With deliberate grace, she reached up and removed the veil, revealing her face for the first time. The room gasped collectively, stunned by her beauty, but Ethan felt something far deeper. He saw not just a beautiful woman, but the strength, intelligence, and kindness that had drawn him to her long before this moment. Sophia continued, her voice unwavering. What matters is not what you see, but what lies beneath. I hope this moment reminds us all to look beyond the surface, to truly see and understand each other. As she stepped down from the stage, the room erupted into applause, but Sophia's eyes were on Ethan. He met her halfway, his expression filled with pride and admiration. You didn't need to do that for them, he said softly. I didn't, she replied, her gaze unwavering. I did it for us. The weeks following the gala marked a new chapter in Ethan and Sophia's relationship. They no longer felt like strangers forced into a marriage of convenience. They had become partners, equals, and, most importantly, friends. Ethan introduced Sophia to his business associates, not as his wife, but as his partner. Her insights and poise quickly earned their respect, and soon, she was an integral part of the business. Together, they made decisions that strengthened Ethan's empire, but more importantly, they built a life together that was rooted in trust and mutual respect. At home, their bond continued to grow. Ethan would often find Sophia in the garden, tending to the flowers she loved, and he would join her, savoring the quiet moments they shared. They laughed more, shared stories from their past, and discovered common dreams for the future. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city, Ethan took Sophia's hand in his. I never thought I'd say this, he began, his voice filled with emotion. But this marriage has been the best thing to ever happen to me. You've changed me in ways I didn't even know I needed. Sophia smiled, her eyes soft with affection. And you've shown me that love doesn't always start with a spark. Sometimes it's built over time, through understanding and patience. Their journey had been anything but conventional, but it had brought them to a place neither could have imagined. As they looked out over the city, the future stretched before them, bright and full of promise. For Ethan and Sophia, their story was no longer about an arranged marriage. It was about a partnership forged through trials, growth, and an unwavering commitment to truly see and support one another. Together, they knew they could face whatever lay ahead, their love stronger than ever. In the end, Ethan and Sophia's story became a testament to the power of patience, understanding, and the courage to look beyond the surface. What began as an arrangement rooted in practicality had blossomed into a partnership filled with respect, admiration, and deep, abiding love. Their journey was not without its challenges, but those challenges had shaped them into stronger individuals and a formidable team. Together, they built not only a thriving business, but also a life rich with shared dreams and mutual support. Ethan learned to see the world, and the people in it, with fresh eyes, while Sophia discovered the strength of vulnerability and the beauty of being truly seen. Their love was not born in a moment of passion, but forged over time, growing steadily like the roots of a strong tree. As they stood side by side, facing a future bright with possibilities, they knew that their union was not defined by the terms of an arrangement, but by the love they had built together. Their story, once shaped by misunderstandings and assumptions, had become a legacy of hope, a reminder that love, when nurtured with care and respect, can transcend all barriers and flourish in the most unexpected of ways. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the story of Ethan and Sophia. Their journey of love, patience, and mutual respect is one we hope inspired and moved you. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who might love it too, and leave us a comment about your favorite part. And if you'd like to hear more captivating stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next story.